Okay, welcome back, Dragon Brood, and today we're going to be talking about Ikoria, Lair of the Beasts, or Lair of the Behemoths, something like that. Big creatures, anyway. But you're probably wondering what the hell we're going to talk about because, truthfully, we don't know a whole lot about it. I mean, we know there's going to be some big monsters, and there's going to be some build your own creature style mechanic, and then we've seen some art that I think has Vivian in it, and then that's about it. But that got me thinking, even with that little bit we know, are there cards you might be able to pick up today that could be good tomorrow? Let's talk about it. All right, first off, let me preface this by saying I'm just making predictions with no information at all here. So don't go gambling the farm on these cards. But I did try to pick out cards that are fairly cheap right now. So, your upside's pretty big. But anyway, let's start with some of these removal cards, right? Because we're talking about a set where there's supposed to be lots of large creatures. So stuff like Citywide Bust that destroys large creatures. Then you have stuff like Giant Killer that destroys creatures power 4 or greater. Things in that line are probably still going to be very, very good as we move forward. Because, hell, if there's big creatures, something has to be played to get rid of them. One other thing I'd like to point out too, when I was making my list, I started thinking that maybe Wizards went heavy on blue-white style decks, control decks, now because blue may not be that good in the next set. Because, blue doesn't ramp up for things to cast creatures. They're not really playing big creatures. So, of all the colors, that might be the weakest. But again, just a blind prediction. We'll see. Now, another fun card I was thinking about is Domri. We kind of quit playing this card, but if you think about it, it helps you ramp up to large creatures, and then it also lets your large creatures fight things, which is what you want your big creatures to be able to do. So why not? And it actually makes stuff uncounterable. So if you're spending that mana to get the bigger creatures, it's more likely it's going to stick. So yeah, give that card a look. I think it's actually pretty dang good. Oh, and also, while we're in these colors, why not look at Nikya? I'm sure some of you probably forgot about this card, right? Because it's not that great. It's a 5-cost 5/5, doubles all your mana, but you can only use it to play creatures. But think about it, right? If it's a set that's all creatures, or mostly big creatures, maybe, then why not have something that just lets you get more mana to play more creatures? And again, this is a card you could probably find in bulk boxes somewhere. So yeah, snag a couple, at least get you a playset. Of course, black was going to get in on the game, but I took the spin of looking at it from cards that just reanimate creatures cheaply or get things back from your yard, or let you replay creatures that maybe if you find a cool way to get them into the graveyard. So stuff like Blood for Bones could stand to be a really powerful card in the new set. Or Order of Midnight. But that's for a different reason. I started thinking, we're going to have this build your own set mechanic, or maybe I should use quotes for that. But if we're going to have that, what does that look like? And then I started thinking, well, if it's something like the augment mechanic, potentially, yes, that was in an unset and it was kind of joking, but if there's a way they can find to make something like that, or maybe just something similar work, this could be a card that's pretty useful there. Because if you have the wrong part, maybe you discard it earlier for some other effect, now you can get the part back that you need to be able to build the creature that you want. There's also really fun cards like Ilhard, right? Now, let's say not everything's about building a creature, and there's just some hosses that live on Behemoth. By the way, hoss is the country term for just a big thing. Yeah, I'm a little bit country. We'll talk about that some other time. But anyway, so let's say there's a bunch of hosses on Ikoria, right? Well, Ilhard's going to let you play those cheaply. And if there's ways to ramp into things to play big guys like Ilhard, then you can play something else with Ilhard and probably kill your opponent on turn 5 or 6 potentially. Seems kind of crazy, but it's not that far-fetched when there's a chance you could get a card like this pretty cheap. In green, I was really only looking at a couple of cards, like Pelt Collector, which we all know is kind of a staple in the creature decks these days if you're playing aggro, so not a surprise there. Yorvo could also be very good because if you're playing subsequently larger creatures each turn, then there's a chance you could end up with a gigantic Yorvo pretty quick. And then, just because Return of the Wild Speaker is just a cool card, And if you have a bunch of big creatures, you can go ahead and draw extra cards, and if not, just maybe they have trample and then you just give them bonuses and win the game, right? But it's a card that I think you're willing to take a gamble on. But also, it's maybe not one like I would want 4 of. Maybe I make sure I have 2 just in case I put them into a deck. But it's another one to consider. There's also 2 black cards I wanted to talk about. Eternal Taskmaster. I don't know why that's so hard to say. Anyway, Eternal Taskmaster and Gravewaker. And the reason these I think could be good is kind of where we were talking about the other black cards, where they're getting stuff back out of the graveyard. Well, these are also creatures that happen to get creatures out of the graveyard. So if there's something that needs you to have creatures in play for whatever reason, or ways to sacrifice creatures to get other things, then having those abilities attached to creatures could also be good. And Gravewaker has a few available because I believe it was both in Core 2019 and Core 2020. So there should be some out there to be had. Again, the idea was to find cheap cards that you could potentially pick up that might have some uses in the future. Okay, this one's kind of random, but I went with Haktos. Not even sure why, but it's a low-costed 6-power creature, which, for that matter, yeah, I guess it's probably the best value there, considering it can give itself protection. But if there's stuff that gives you bonuses for playing things power 5 or greater, or maybe even 6 or greater, seems totally reasonable. Well, I guess if we're going to include that one, we actually also have to include Nullhide Pharax now that I'm thinking about it. Because that's also a 4-cost 6/6, and if we're going to end up playing a deck with mostly creatures potentially, this card could stand to be really good, especially if there ends up being some discard mechanic in the set your opponents might be playing. That's actually a really good consideration. That's one, for sure, it's probably worth having a set of 4 of going into Ikoria's release. And I did manage to find a couple of blue cards. I mean, I guess kinda, they're blue-green. Sorta counts, right? Kiora being the first one, because, well, you get to draw cards, and that's awesome. And Kiora also lets you untap your lands to get extra mana, to be able to play bigger things faster. So why not, right? Like, it does both things you want. It allows you to play your creatures faster, and it lets you draw cards, which creature decks don't really get to do that often. And she has a lot of loyalty, so there's a chance that even if you have to play her out there with maybe just a elf or something, some mana creature early, you could still block with the creature and still keep Kiora up to get you to where you want to go the following turn. So it's not the worst thing in the world. The other card is Neoform. And again, I think if the set plays out right, whether there's a mechanic where you get to just build bigger creatures or just play bigger creatures, great, you go search for the ones that you need. But it could also be a situation where maybe when creatures die, they kind of like Voltron up, right? Like maybe when this thing dies, a creature of a similar type gets +2/+2, or who knows what, right? Like maybe that's the way it goes. So we're like building Lego creatures effectively. Well, if that's the way it went, then something like Neoform actually lets you sacrifice a creature, get that ability, and then also go find the next biggest thing. So maybe from a different angle, this card could also be good. Like, that's what this whole thing is about, right? I'm just speculating because we have no idea how this mechanic's going to work, which makes it kind of exciting. But, you know, why not try to get ahead of the game? But yeah, again, I wouldn't say any of this is anything to take to heart. Definitely not the gospel. I'm kind of just spitballing, throwing out ideas, seeing like, what could we do? What does the format potentially look like? What cards are not being played much now that might be reasonable later? I mean, we're only about a month away from actually having Ikoria cards in our hands. And that's kind of exciting. But at the same time, I know everybody would like to be a little more prepared. And if you can make a little money, especially with all the stuff going on and some people needing some opportunity, these are cheap ways to maybe get your hands on some cash, right? Because think about it. Like, I think maybe Ilharg might be the most expensive of the cards I listed. And several of them are just regular rares. A couple were uncommons. So you could pick up probably this whole list, a couple of play sets. I wouldn't be surprised for probably like $20 or something. And then you're all set going in the next set. If only 2 or 3 of them end up being played, great. If none of them do, you're not out much. To me, that's my style of speculation I like to have, is very, very low risk and then have a huge upside. So maybe my 25-cent card becomes a $1.50 card. Great. I'm not looking to have a $3 or $4 card that becomes a $20 card, because that's a lot more rare. But yeah, let me know what you think. What kind of ideas do you think Ikoria has? Or what do you think the mechanic's going to be? Or do you like this type of video at all? Because I have no idea. I'm just taking a shot at it. First time I've tried something like this. I don't know anybody else that does, but hey, why not? I could be completely wrong. And truthfully, feel free to come back to this video later and tell me I'm wrong. And while we're talking about it, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button if you liked the video. And please subscribe to the channel because that helps a bunch. That's all I got for now. We'll see you next time.